615 Sessions podcast. We got Cory Curtis from WKRN News 2 and Teresa Walker from the Associated Press. We got a divisional round football game. We got Derrick Henry back in the building, and all anybody could talk about is the peach. I don't know if this is the place that we need to start the podcast today. For those of you listening, this is a peach-colored jumpsuit, in my opinion, but apparently my judgment, both from a fashion standpoint and a color standpoint, has been questioned. Hello to you both.
Hello, Buck. It's good to see you.
Hello, Buck. And I'll just say, to me, it looked tan. I'm just saying, but Jim Wyatt's photo, his tweet catching you. I mean, I swear, it looked like you were like, what? And again, it reminds me of a, rabbit licking their head out, kind of surprised somebody's there. What's up, Doc?
It wasn't a great look for me.
For me, it comes down to this. If you were working out and were sneaking in a workout before you got to the Titans facility, I could go with it. But I'm going to quote the great Jerry Seinfeld. You really look like you've just given up on attracting a mate and you're just going to be comfortable.
Which my girlfriend can probably confirm at this point in our relationship. No, we can make fun of the tracksuit later. But Derrick Henry, I mean, the biggest thing other than apparently my tracksuit on the internet yesterday, Derrick Henry spoke to the media. I mean, guys, this is crazy. This is an incredible story all year long. We've all talked about it at great length. But the opportunity for them to do this in this spot with Derrick on the field, Cory, I don't know how you could write a more perfect script for this up until this point, and then, see how the playoffs go.
Well, Buck, I mean, I think the first part of this for me is it just goes back to the NFL's new injured reserve rules and how much better it is for the league.
So much.
I mean, because not only did it give the Titans a shot at bringing Derrick Henry back, we've still been talking about Derrick Henry for 3 months, whereas before we would have written him off and known we weren't going to see him till next year, and we wouldn't have been talking about him. Last weekend, we got back J.J. Watt and Juju Smith-Schuster because of the injured reserve rules. And now we're getting back Derrick Henry. And I say we, as far as NFL fans, getting to see great football players play. Look, we knew the timeline. We knew how it was going to work out. And we also know that this can be a tricky injury, but having seen him practice for 3 straight weeks with no setbacks, and I listen to the national media say, if he comes back, and I listen to people say he's going to play on one leg. I'm like, you guys have no idea what you're talking about. The guy's been practicing for 3 weeks. He's going 100%. My main concern for him is mental. Is he mentally good to cut and blast away on that foot? Because I think physically, outside of not playing football for 3 months, he looks good to go.
And that's the biggest thing, Cory. When you come off an injury, it does take something. You need to be hit. He's going to have to cut and plant on that foot in a game to truly be confident in it and see how he's going. And, he joked about how he has that big plate in his foot, and that's the only difference between his feet. But, that is going to be a hurdle for him to get over. And you mentioned the unlimited return rules. Guys, forget Derrick Henry. This team is not in the playoffs if not for the unlimited return rules. I mean, 91 players used this year, 39 on defense. I think it's 43 on offense. I mean, 43 different starters. I mean, the numbers are almost stunning. Most ever in a non-strike season in the NFL. And, I wrote about this a couple months ago. The NFL is going to be talking about the unlimited return rules this offseason. If they don't make it just the 17-game season, this has to be the way the NFL operates moving forward. Otherwise, look at how many stars would be done for the year. J.J. Watt wouldn't have come back last weekend, and Derrick Henry wouldn't have had a chance to play on Saturday.
The season's too long, and the medicine has improved too much to not allow guys to come back.
No, you guys are both spot on in this regard. And, a lot of business models just generally throughout the course of this entire thing have had inefficiencies exposed, because their hands have been forced. And the NFL, not like their business was necessarily hurting, but for the first time in quite a long time, they took a loss on revenue last year as well. There has never been more intrigue, even with the quote unquote super wild card weekend that we got was just really a trash week at week 19 of NFL football, but still playoffs and still with the kind of juice that we're talking about, because you do have the potential for that star power to return at the perfect time. I think you're both spot on with this conversation.
That's why we're here, Buck. We're geniuses.
Super geniuses, excuse me.
So, quote unquote super geniuses. But so we do get Derrick Henry back at this point. And I mean, I talked to Greg Cosell about this yesterday. Cory, like Cory referenced, we've all seen him at practice and the progress that he's made ramping up, and even the work. You've really not seen the work behind the scenes, because for a superstar athlete, Derrick has been really, really low key, almost non-existent for basically 12 weeks at this point. But they're not putting him out there, Teresa, to get 6 carries on Saturday.
No, and that's the thing. My question is it 10 to 15 or 12? I mean, and here's the thing. You still have D'Onta Foreman. But as we heard all week, the confidence that Derrick Henry gives them, the difference he makes in the passing game, because you have to respect Derrick Henry's ability to go the distance anytime he touches the ball. And it's crazy to think that a 6'3", 247-pound guy can be that kind of a home run threat. He's not CJ2K. He's not that blippity kind of guy who's going to just take a dart and go. But when he gets out in the open field, stiff arm, I mean, anytime he gets out in the open field, you almost kind of hold your breath thinking he could go. And, because so often he does, so does he come off of this injury? Can he be caught? But, I won't be surprised if he gets in the game and gets 18 carries on Saturday, or maybe crazy close to 20. I mean, we've seen him be kind of a physical freak at running back. For so long, it was like, don't pay running backs. They're not worth it. Well, every now and then you get a special running back, and Derrick Henry has proven with his production and the names that he is keeping company with in NFL history with his production, he is different.
And I think the other thing there, Teresa, you talked about his game-breaking ability, and that's one of the other big national misconceptions. Everybody just views him as a bruiser. He's a game changer. He is a lightning bolt. He's a guy who goes 70 yards. That's the difference between him and D'Onta Foreman. And I like D'Onta Foreman, but D'Onta Foreman doesn't go 70, okay? And Derrick Henry does. And the other thing that defense has with Derrick Henry is fear. They are afraid of being embarrassed on national television. They are keyed up. They are ready to go. They don't want to be ejected into the third row of the stadium, and they don't want to be posterized like Michael Jordan and be seen running behind him with him going for 50 yards. There is such a level of respect with him on the field that it commands that they pay attention to every bit of what he does. And that opens things up for A.J. Brown, for Ryan Tannehill, for Anthony Ferkser, for Julio Jones. And I think I just saw the numbers on ESPN. Okay. They've only played together 120 snaps this year. That's
Mike Keith gave us that number on the radio earlier. It's wild.
And the yardage totals they're putting up when they get those guys on the field together is staggering. Okay. So I have said for weeks that I feel like the reason for my optimism about this team is not only because I think they're well coached and because I think that they're really super tough, but I still think that the best for this team is yet to come. I don't think we've seen it because we haven't seen the team very much.
No, it's a totally different. And Teresa, you outlined the number of different starters, the number of different players who have dressed for this team, and I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Well, that's the thing. They're 12-5 with the number 1 seed. Despite that, they're 4-0 against the remaining teams in the divisional round. The numbers that they put up, 8 wins against teams with winning records. Now, asterisk, the first time in it's his first 17-game season, but they're the first team in NFL history to have that many wins against other winning teams. And yet they've done it with the rotating faces, the different players, the limited amount of snaps for their triplets. And, that's the thing. Now we get to see if they can put it together at this stage and they're rested. I mean, it's like, Mike Vrabel and John Robinson could not have drawn a script to have this team ready for this moment any better. It has a potential. I mean, they're going to, Super Bowl's in LA. Yes, there's a chance for a Hollywood ending to this season.
Look at you. It's like you're a writer. Teresa Walker, ladies and gentlemen. But the thing, and Cory, I like the point that you brought up about the respect that has to be paid, because we've all seen it a million times. Defenses sell out to stop Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill can then either boot out or catch a crossing pattern across the middle of the field because the linebackers have been sucked up, and because they have boot rules, they're already looking to account for that crosser. So you've already put them in a conflict situation, and it's tenfold with Derrick on the field. A lot of it's just I mean, physically, he's incredible, faster, bigger, stronger, all these things. But so much of this impact, guys, it's not necessarily quantifiable. It's the confidence that having him out there on the field means for the Tennessee Titans. It's the fear, as Cory said, and kind of just overthinking or over preparation that can slow you down just a fraction of a second as a defender, because you're not exactly sure what's going to happen, but you know you have to keep your eyes on that guy. And then, I mean, I can't remember the name of the Bills safety who did not make the business decision. It's his respect. It's as much oh my God, it's as much respect as I've had for another human being in my life, because he tried to get in the way of Derrick Henry. Darius Leonard has tried to do that. And even when you do all of the things right and you square up to make the tackle, he's still 250 pounds and he's going to roll over your face. That place is going to be nuts on Saturday, Cory.
You know what? I usually don't care if they intro the offense, the defense, but I think they're crazy if they don't introduce the offense to start this football game. I've been here almost 20 years. I got here in 2003, so I was not here for the Super Bowl here, and I have been here to hear that stadium be crazy loud. Like Teresa, you remember the Code Blue game when they beat Peyton Manning and the Colts on Monday Night Football? That was when they went when they started 13-0. I mean, that place was nuts. This is as excited as this town has been about this team in 20 years, and as confident as they've been about this team in 20 years. Derrick Henry's a big part of that. Their belief in Derrick Henry is a big part of that. I think the team's belief in Derrick Henry is a big part of that. I'm getting off track here, but it's just introducing a guy, but it's all so symbolic. It's like wrestling, it's like that Ray Lewis intro. I mean, that set the stage for every Ravens game for a decade. And that's going to set the stage in this game. They introduced the defense. I want to know who made that decision, because I think they're nuts.
There's no way, Teresa. There's no way.
Well, and introduce Derrick last. Usually it's usually it's Tannehill coming out. But you mentioned loud, and it's like I've covered I've been all 25 seasons. So Music City Miracle, once they announced that the touchdown stood, it was insane. The other time, the last time they won a divisional playoff game in that stadium, the fireworks going off, Joe Nedney, on the third try, the kick finally gets through, with all the timeouts, et cetera. And they finally win that game. It was really loud that day. That said, think about it. Last year, COVID, they had a limited number of fans in the stadium for that game.
The defense was so bad last year. Yes. Nobody had any expectations of this team in the postseason.
Especially playing the Ravens, it was set up for, it's like, oh, deja vu, here we go again. Yeah. And then this is a team that third straight playoff run 2 years ago in the AFC Championship. It doesn't feel like this franchise has had the chance until now to truly kind of reap what they have sown in this stretch where they've been putting things together. So it feels like it. I mean, to have sold out this game and a potential AFC Championship game before your first opponent, to me, is a sign that fans are ready to come out, support this team, and be loud.
Yeah.
Pro football in Nashville, for me, I mean, it hasn't been 20 plus years. I got here right at the start of the Marcus Mariota thing, and
it's your fault. It was your fault.
Listen, they've never had a losing season with me covering the team. So you're all welcome.
Oh, wow. So it was John Robinson or Buck Reising.
Listen, it will be hotly contested on sports talk radio everywhere in Nashville until the end of time. But I mean, I remember thinking when I first got here, just to kind of put it through, because I think it's great context, because we got all kinds of people, who've been here, who are transplants coming into Nashville. And I think that's such a big part of what this is, guys, because there's a disconnect
of fans.
There's a disconnect between generations of people like me who have come in, for me, 6 years, and I'm one of the longer tenured people among the people that I know who are moving to Nashville. People get in 2 weeks ago, a month ago, whatever. People are moving into the city like crazy, and it's been the case for a while now, but they've all always had other NFL teams and nothing to really attach themselves to the Tennessee Titans in a way that you feel like can stick, like the Predators in 2017 with the Stanley Cup run and how much more energy that gave to people who had just gotten to town, seen how Nashville handles these events. And from my standpoint, I think it is so important, not just for their postseason viability, because that's huge, of course, how they handle this postseason. Ryan Tannehill is going to be judged very much on how he handles this postseason. Julio Jones is going to be judged very much on how they handle this postseason. But for the future sustainability of them being talked about in a way that people want them talked about locally, they've got to make some noise against Joe Burrow and a really good Bengals team.
Yeah, it's an opportunity without question, Buck. I mean, when you talk about, putting yourself in position, they had this town. The Titans had this town, and they never really truly lost it, but they lost the investment of the fan, right? Like, I like the Titans. I just don't like them enough to spend $300 to go to the game this weekend. I'll just watch it on TV.
Sure.
Now you're starting to get fans. I want to be a part of this experience. And, I say this because they were poorly managed for a long time. I have talked at length about how Amy Adams Strunk has helped save this franchise. And they've giving them a product worth watching. And now they're also giving them star players worth paying to go see. That is another thing that has been missing. I remember when the Dallas Cowboys came in here, it just beat the stew out of them. I mean, they came in with DeMarco Murray and Tony Romo, and they just blasted them. I remember Joe Leadingham was our weekend sports anchor at the time. And I was like, Joe, gosh, what would it be like if the Titans actually had players like that? And then they got DeMarco Murray, and they were really good that year. And they've added more and more good players. And now we have a top 5 player here in Derrick Henry. You're giving fans a reason to spend that money to believe and attach themselves. But you're right. This is a big game. This is a big game. You can only break hearts so many times.
And they've done it a couple times this year, Teresa.
Well, they absolutely have. But here's the difference. Trust me, as soon as they got that #1 seed, I had fans adding me on social media. Some people remembering what happened in 2000 and 2008 when they lost to the Ravens and those Super Bowl dreams were just dashed on the rocks, that, they were almost like, no, I'll pass. I don't want that. But here's the difference. One, the Ravens aren't here. They're done. They're toast. And coach, I mean, for all that Jeff Fisher did for this franchise, and, he did take them to their only Super Bowl berth. Mike Vrabel, the confidence that his experience with 3 Super Bowl rings, knowing what matters at this stage of the postseason. When we've heard his message since the game ended in Houston about how, it's win or go home. It's we made it to the Elite 8 where, it's, now it's one fumble can cost you everything, every penalty matters. And you talk to players the last couple of days, they've been mimicking that message. So they know that this is the time where what you do matters, study harder, prepare yourself, make sure you're eating and doing everything you possibly can to seize this moment. And I think that may end up being the difference. His experience on this stage, and to circle around to what Cory said, credit to Amy Adams Strunk. She agreed with John Robinson firing Mike Mularkey. They had just made it to a divisional round, and yet they decided, you know what? We're gonna push our chips to the middle of the table, and we're gonna fire this guy and take a chance on a guy who's never been a head coach before. But we're gonna see if he can take us to championships. And let's face it, they're 3 games away from putting their marker down, building that Titan way that they talked about when he was introduced.
I watched that Dallas Cowboys 49ers playoff game on Sunday, and I watched Mike McCarthy, and he's not alone. But he's the most recent example of a coach who just cost his team the opportunity to do something and a roster in Dallas that could do something. And I watched that game at the end and just thought to myself, from our perspective, Mike Vrabel would never put them in a position like that. And there have been moments when we have been critical about in-game coaching decisions.
Sure.
But as Teresa brought up, first-time head coach, or first, this is still his first tenure as an NFL head coach. And how much smarter the game has gotten, and people like Vrabel have gotten around the game at this time of year, not just having a competitive roster and a healthy competitive roster, but Cory, your coach, being a plus on the sideline. I mean, if you want to look at Cliff Kingsbury, if you want to look at McCarthy, if you want to look at a Brandon Staley who overthought it too much, like there are a lot of different examples of how things can go sideways very quickly if the person on the sidelines for you doesn't have a grasp of the situation. There's no coach in the league who's more prepared than Mike Vrabel. I mean, his teams are prepared for everything. And I know there's Bill Belichick out there. I do. He wasn't prepared for Josh Allen. And he's been out coached by Mike Vrabel every time he's played him. Even the game they won, he was out coached in that game. They had a plan. Yeah, he had a plan. It's just turnovers cost him the football game. Yeah. So he knows the rules. There's a lot of Jeff Fisher in Mike Vrabel. I know fans don't like to hear that. Nobody knew the rules better than Jeff Fisher. Yeah. Nobody. He's on the competition committee for a reason, as is Mike. Absolutely. Yeah. And maybe I should say a younger Jeff Fisher rather than towards the end of the line. But I mean, there are some similarities. But look, his team is always prepared. His team has taken on his swagger. And the thing that I have loved about what he has done, I guess it could have something to do with the roster, but I think it has a lot to do with him, is the toughness to which this team plays with. I have continually said they are like Rocky Balboa. They lead with their chin. They say, go ahead and hit me as many times as you want. I will be standing when this game is over and you will not be. And I think that absolutely has 100% to do with their head coach. I think preparation is one thing and it's massively important, but I think toughness is an intangible that very few coaches can invoke in a team, and he's done it. And they trust him. Yeah. Totally. And here's the thing, that situation in Dallas, I'll make you a bet that he probably addressed that in the next team meeting that they had. Guys, at the end of the game situation, if we're on offense, you give that ball to an official. Ryan Tannehill told us a few weeks ago that, him and Stretch go through, game situations so that, to double check things, double check the rules so that they're prepared for any moment that comes up. And so, yeah, if something happens and they've got the ball, I just can't, if it's a choice to give the ball to Derrick Henry inside the 10 as opposed to maybe kicking a field goal, I'm thinking about Matt LaFleur's decision in the NFC Championship game a year ago. The odds are pretty good that Vrabel's going to make the right choice in that decision and gamble to win, because this is the time of the year where it's win or go home, and he knows that very, very well. So, and yeah, he was just recently added to the competition committee because, again, he knows that rule book. Yeah. Teresa, if they're going to pull this off, and they're favored, I mean, they're 3.5-point favorites. Vegas understands these things as well as any of us at this point. And there's, outside of the Bengals being able to move the ball from 20 to 20, there's very little reason why they shouldn't be able to win this game. The expectation should absolutely for them to be able to host an AFC Championship game at this point. But Teresa, if they're going to do it, how will they do it? They've got to get pressure with their front four on Joe Burrow and make him throw a pick or two. They've gone 5 straight games without a turnover by that offense, and he's not been picked. But they've got, Simmons and Landry and Bud Dupree, who told us a couple days ago that he is as healthy as he's been in over a year. And he thinks he's peaking at the right time, and he's ready to have a great game. So we haven't really seen him. We've seen him in spurts, had a couple plays here and there, but we haven't seen him. So they've got the ability to pinch, go up the middle with Simmons and Autry. I'm looking forward to seeing what that front four can do. And also against an offensive line, the only quarterback who's been sacked more than Ryan Tannehill, Joe Burrow. And so get some turnovers. And then, that to me is the big key, because I do think the Titans offense will be able to do enough to get enough points on the board to win. Let me add on top of that with the pass rush. It's got to be a disciplined pass rush. And that's one of the things that this team has done extremely well. Because if you just get pressure on Burrow up the middle, he will go out of the pocket and he will make you pay. We saw that last year. You saw that in the playoff game last week. One of the things this Titans front four has done extremely well is collapse the pocket from both sides and then hold it up in the middle so that there is no escape route. Having no escape route
is much more important than flying in there at 700 miles an hour trying to take the guy's head off. Make him uncomfortable, make him have to throw over somebody, collapse it around him. And they've done that this year against guys like Patrick Mahomes, holding the Chiefs to 3 points. I think it's one of the huge keys to this game. You do that and you don't turn the football over, I like the Titans' chances a lot.
I know nothing about astrology, but there's too many things that feel like they're cosmically aligned. Even coming back to the opponent with the Cincinnati Bengals, because you guys remember that press conference after Cincinnati. We're all on Zoom together and we're asking Mike basically, what the hell? And he's looking at us like, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. We had the game plan. They just couldn't get it done. And when you
were terrible that day,
Jonathan Joseph, Vic Beasley, both gone that Monday after, like it was, I mean, there is a lot of alignment that's happening with this football team. And the first part of that undisciplined, or that disciplined pass rush rather, Cory, that you brought up, is that was one of the biggest criticisms I heard about Jadeveon Clowney, is that just do what he wants and he'll hang you out to dry a little bit. They had no sacks of Joe Burrow that day, but you remember he had a free run at Burrow and whiffed on him. It's so bad on him. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Well, also in that game, Titans all year long in 2020, horrible in the red zone and also third down. You know, those were two areas that they struggled in. Those are two areas that this defense, with the changes that they made in personnel and the Jim Schwartz effect, which we don't know exactly what he does. And we'll never find out. We never will. But it's those are the areas that they absolutely have improved in. And some of the stats they gave us today, that they're with the Bills and the Saints, top 12 in a handful of very key defensive categories, and the important ones: third down efficiency, red zone efficiency, and then sixth in points allowed. So the difference in defenses from that time to now is amazing. And I'll just say this: the symmetry, you mentioned how everything keeps coming around. The Bengals just ended a playoff skid that dated back to their last win over the then Houston Oilers, this franchise before it moved to Tennessee. And now they've lost 7 straight playoff games. They've never won away from home. It just doesn't feel like this is going to be a weekend where they're going to be able to snap a second straight playoff drought. We're going to find out on Saturday, kids. Teresa Walker of the Associated Press, Cory Curtis, WKRN News 2. Make sure you're checking out all of their great work, because there's going to be a lot of great conversations coming out of this game, one way or another. We're all going to be there on Saturday to cover it. Guys, I appreciate you stopping by. This was a lot of fun. Absolutely.
Been a privilege.